Right, okay. May I welcome all members and officers to this hybrid meeting of the Cleaner Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This meeting is able to be viewed live by members of the press and public today. Therefore, may I welcome anyone who may be watching remotely. A recording of the meeting will be made available on the Council's webcasting and YouTube channels after the meeting has concluded, should anyone else also wish to view it. To confirm, as a Council, we welcome the use of the Welsh language within our public meetings, but I can confirm that I've not received any notification or request to use Welsh today. Therefore, the meeting will be conducted in English only. May I remind members to refrain from using the chat facility and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you wish to speak. Please, could you also keep your microphone muted when not talking so there aren't any interruptions encountered. May I also remind members and officers that as per statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our own formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by the members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask that you all please use your cameras for the duration of the meeting? I would note that we have no members of the press or public in the gallery today. Moving on to the agenda, could Niall, the Democratic Services Officer, confirm any apologies received?
Yes, morning, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Elizabeth Haynes and Councillor Gaynor James.
Thank you very much. Could I ask then members for declarations of interest in alphabetical order? Starting with Councillor Ashley.
None that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Councillor Clarkson.
None that I'm aware of, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I'm on South Wales Fire Authority, which is one of the people who have been mentioned in the report.
Right, thank you. Councillor Haller.
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. Councillor James is given apology. Councillor O'Connell, not online, I don't think. Councillor Parish.
Nothing that I'm aware of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And myself, nothing to declare either. So we move on to item 3. Oh, I threw my card on the floor again. Which are the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of November 2023, which was the report we received on cemeteries service. So have you anything to raise in relation to these minutes? Otherwise, I'll take them as agreed. I see no hands, so I think, members, we accept those as accurate minutes. Thank you. Which moves us on to there was no action sheet, I don't think. Action sheet. The action sheet, sorry, is next item 5.
Item 4, Chair, page 19.
Page 19, thank you for that. Niall? Oh, not Niall. I'm having one of those days, it seems. I'll get to the right page. Yep, so we had a couple of actions and Geraint can update on those.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you can see, obviously the recommendations were emailed to the exec member, and we're just waiting for those back. Obviously, with this meeting being brought forward, we haven't had much of a window between the previous meeting and this one, but I'm anticipating those back before Christmas, so obviously I'll share them with the committee. Similarly, I think the next action on the list with the capacity at cemeteries, I'm anticipating that to come back with those responses to the recommendations, but I'm not sure about the questionnaire, but obviously as soon as the final version is ready, possibly in the new year, we can then share that with yourselves.
Great. Any questions on the action sheet? No? All happy? Great. We move on. So item 5, which is the main substantive item, which is Torfaen Council's local flood risk management strategy. I'm not sure. So the purpose of this report is to give the Cleaner Communities Committee an update on the local flood risk management strategy as required under the Flood and Water Management Act including the direction we'll undertake for the next 6 years. So can I welcome Mark Thomas, Deputy Director for Highways and Climate Change, Caris Williams, Flood Risk Officer, and Leanne Harris, Highway Development Control Officer, to the meeting. And Councillor Mandy Owen, who has joined us as well now, so welcome as well, Councillor Owen. I'd also take this opportunity to thank members of the public for comments that were sent in regarding the report, which were appreciated by the committee and in their considerations in the pre-agenda meeting and the questions for today's meeting. So can I ask officers if they could give members a brief overview of the main points within the report, and then we'll go through sort of member questions. I don't know who's leading off on this, so okay.
Hello. Yes, so as the Chair stated, we are here today to discuss with you our update of the local flood risk management strategy. So the Flood and Water Management Act became law in 2010 across the UK. Under this legislation, Torfaen County Borough Council has been designated as a lead local flood authority. And as such with this, we have a series of delegated and associated responsibilities. One of these is to develop, implement and monitor a strategy for how we will manage surface water flooding and ordinary watercourse flooding and groundwater flooding across Torfaen. We published our first strategy in 2013, and this was followed up by the Flood Risk Management Plan in 2015. This strategy is a combination of those two previous documents, which has been updated and will last for 6 years. We will update our action plan yearly. The strategy implements how we will follow the Welsh Government strategy for flood risk management at a local level. More than 2,500 properties across Torfaen are at risk of flooding. The National Strategy explains that as climate changes, we can expect those risks to increase with more frequent and severe floods. It is our aim to reduce the number of properties which are currently at risk and prevent any future properties from becoming at risk, while enhancing our community resilience. To do this, we are commissioning flood models of our critical ordinary watercourses, which can account for climate change and will help us identify areas of improvement and design any future flood alleviation schemes to cope with not only a 1 in 100 year event, but an additional 40% allowance for climate change.
Okay, is there any other points on the report that any of the other officers would like to highlight? No? And quick check with Executive Member Councillor Owen if there's anything she would like to add.
No, thank you, David. Apologies for being late. I'm so full up with some sort of flu bug. So, no, I think the report gives all the detail. Hopefully, all members would have read it. But open to questions.
Okay, well, we'll open up for questions. We have a number of questions for you, and so I'll open up with Councillor Nick Horler to start us off.
Good morning. This is about 4.3A. What kind of engagement have you had with local businesses and residents? And will communications include physical copies for those members of the public that are not online?
Thank you for your question. So far we have done a public consultation which ran from July this year to September. This was shared across social media and was also emailed out to local businesses for them to comment back to us. The consultation included a question which said, if you would like further information about how flooding will affect your business or your property, here are my contact details. I've yet to have anyone contact me about it, but the option is there, and the physical copies will be made available for those who do not have access to social media.
Thank you, that's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's nice and clear. So I'll move on to Councillor Clarkson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's around 4.3, paragraph A. It talks there of improving our understanding and communication of the risk, and updating and aligning information on flood risk, working collaboratively with residents and businesses. So the question I'd like to that is, can you expand on how you will continue to update flood risk, communicate this with residents, and how you will work with partners?
Thank you for your question. Yes, so the current website explains details on how you can find out if you are at risk with NRW. This primarily focuses on online tools. However, I would like to update it with information regarding what you can do to protect your property, how to find out what level of risk you are at and where this source is coming from, how we can work with community groups that already exist in. I'm aware that there is a climate and nature action group, so we're working with those to sort of find out the appetite of what people would like from us, so we can go ahead and tailor it from there. I think that's everything, yeah.
Okay, I see that Mark's got a hand up, so would you like to give us some extra points here, Mark?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you. And firstly, thank you for the opportunity for being able to bring this report to the committee. It's very much appreciated, and the feedback and support from members is crucial as we develop any proposals. Going on from that, really, one thing would like to add, and it's the two questions already made, the issues of the points are well made, and just to give an undertaking that if members need support in terms of attending community events in person to talk through the flood risk management strategy and what that means for affected communities, I'm more than happy to offer that support from officers to support the communities face to face as well. So just to give that sort of support to the strategy and ongoing consideration.
Thanks for that, Mark. Are you happy with that, Linda?
Yes, I think we'll expand on the next couple of questions a bit more.
Okay, so I'll bring Councillor Clarkson in because there's a couple of related questions. So over to you, Linda.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, looking at part 4.3 of the report, but looking more at paragraphs D and E. Bear with me a second. Preventing more people becoming exposed to risk and some actions that you be taking and providing effective and sustained response. There have been risks identified there, mainly Welsh Government would maybe reduce the funding for investigatory works to be carried out. So the questions are, looking at the information that you've put within the report, as you're looking at one high priority site per year within the action plan, how on track are you to achieve all identified works within the known funding period? And are there enough resources available to achieve these actions?
Okay, so I think Leanne's coming in on this.
Thanks for your question, Councillor. At the moment, we are more focusing on the flood risk that we know about, but that's why we're modelling watercourses to find out what areas and neighbourhoods will be affected in the future in regards to climate change. We need all that modelling before we can programme works. When we bid to Welsh Government for money, we need to have the proof available, really, of the risk that they're at, or the areas are at, and known previous flooding events. So schemes that have happened in the past then have been based on events that we already know about, and that's why we've been able to gain funding. That's why we need to do the modelling now, so that we can basically give proof to Welsh Government that we need funding in those areas. Until we have that, we can't really tell you exactly where we are with it. We just need to do the modelling first.
Okay. I see Mark's got a hand up as well. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so following on from Leanne's response, really, Councillor Clarkson. What we've got as well, we've got developing some very experienced officers internally within Torfaen to shape and move the strategy forward, and then obviously so we can, if we're flexible, we will take on additional support as and when needed then to actually deliver those schemes as well, and obviously to take any specific modelling and detailed design as well. So it's quite a flexible model that we're adopting, but one that we'll be able to flex to the scale of any projects and the results of the subsequent modelling as well.
Okay, so still with you, Linda.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Moving on in the report to 5.1, and again, there's a lot of discussion around public engagement and mentioning that it's important, but it is also a risk. So looking at the Data Map Wales information that's available so far, there's some very specific concentrated areas that are identified as high risk on that map. So in regards to public engagement, would it be possible to inform those people in those areas regarding the risk that they're in at the current time, inform them how to get flood alerts if they're water courses that are causing the risk, or how to make their own flood prevention plans?
Hi, yes, thank you for your question. Yes, so going forward, we are fully preparing to reach out to those who we know are at risk. We have, through the Communities at Risk Register, it identifies all of the addresses in Torfaen which are at low, medium and high risk of flooding. We will be engaging with these properties through letter drops and invite them to come and have a discussion with us about what level of risk are they currently at and what they can do to reduce that risk and how we can work together on it. I know in the past that we have had some flood groups across Torfaen after sort of the events of 2014, but we are engaging with partners like NRW and charities such as Floodry to set up additional flood action groups so that those that are at risk in our community that are perhaps more disadvantaged, that are disabled and need caring for, if they can't physically do something themselves, there are people around them in their communities that can help them and assist them.
Thank you, that's nice and clear. Linda, any happy with that? Anything further?
Yeah, that's good to know that we've already got that sort of in place, and we won't be waiting for the modelling to sort of carry those actions out. Thank you.
That's an assurance, thank you. So I'll move on to Councillor Nicola.
So, how can GBC make a link to inform public around the importance of green spaces, green space management and local drainage, i.e. kind of reducing the soil spillage and encouraging grassland growth, as we know that grassland growth puts new roots into the ground, it reduces the amount of soil that's coming off the land that's potentially going down through. How can we encourage and inform local residents that this is a policy that we should be pushing through?
Thank you for your question. We are working with our colleagues in ecology who have developed these strategies and policies around green space management. The programme going forward focuses on natural flood risk management, so sort of utilising those green spaces and working together with natural processes to reduce the risk of flooding, but also not taking away the ecology and biodiversity of those areas and actually enhancing them, making them better. So working with those colleagues, I know they've already got Friends of Local Nature Reserve groups in place that we can go ahead and work with and communicate with them, see what they want in their areas as well, to try and make a more cohesive and well-rounded flood risk alleviation scheme in the future.
Thank you, that's great.
Okay, yeah, and I think that awareness raising is definitely positive. Just as a comment, in engagement locally with the Llanrwst Football Club, they're interested and aware of the need for flood risk management, so that may be something I would encourage them to contact you about. Councillor Parish, would you like to come in now?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's about gully suckers. How many gully suckers does the council have, and how often do they go around? For example, what maintenance schedule is in place regarding gully work, and how do we manage when there are urgent blocked gullies or collapsed gullies needing repair?
Thank you for your question. The council has one gully sucker with a crew that operates it. They work on a maintenance schedule from north to south. So as they work through Torfaen, once they reach the south, they go back up to the north then, apart from during periods of heavy rainfall, where they're more reactive in their work.
Just to add to that, in relation to repairs, we do have a drainage officer who is proactive at organising repairs when they're reported to us, or if there's instances of flooding that make it obvious that there is an issue with our drainage system, and works are programmed just as works are programmed through our highway inspections and repair schedules.
Okay, are you happy with that, Councillor Parish?
Can I come in? Can I come back in, please?
And then I see there's a couple of hands as well, so after you, I'll bring the others in.
Yeah, regarding collapsed gullies needing repair, I know there are some that the council haven't repaired for some time. I mean, that is a problem. And quite a few years ago, members would have liked to have seen a second gully sucker, but that didn't emerge. Is there any chance of having one? Because if the gully sucker is working from north to south and there are emergencies, well, surely if there was a second one, that could go to the blocked ones that people are complaining about, because there are a lot of complaints about blocked gullies. Could you comment on that, please?
I see that Mark's got his hand up, so I'll bring Mark in here for that, because I think it probably rests there.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's correct, and it's a good point, Councillor Parish, that we're looking at. And just to give you an update, I'm in the process of reviewing that operation as well, in terms of the wider highway operation as well. I'm looking for better collaboration between the the sweepers as well, especially having been proactive in terms of during periods of heavy leaf fall, to make sure that these gullies don't get blocked, but we sweep them away and clear the leaves so they don't end up into the drains first of all. We are looking at, as you say, the gully sucker service as well in terms of the cleansing, and I'll be able to update members further. But obviously, we are under significant pressure, as you know, with the council under the medium-term financial plan. So what officers really are obliged to do, such as myself, is ensure we're operating as efficiently as possible across not just highways but street scene as well. Better collaboration in terms of services, and then of course, yes, we'll look to see if there's additional resource needed. We'll certainly come back to members and have that discussion.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. And I see Councillor Ashley's got a hand. You want to come in on this point, Councillor Ashley?
Yeah, I like Norma. I go past. It's a historical thing. We did have a gully sucker, which we did sort of break down. We were aware that we've now got a newer gully sucker. But thanks, Mark, for that answer. It's something that members are aware of. We've got one gully sucker. For any reason the thing breaks down or gets overwhelmed, the alternatives, I have been to various shows where scarabs and street things can do the job to some extent. Steve would tell me off for this because he knows more about this than I do. But I say that because other vehicles can perform the role to think the streets, and you just answered to some extent. But the other point is arrangements with other boroughs. I have seen that as well in other places. Certainly, the whole business is about having alternatives quickly, and the fact that we've had floods where we would need more than one. So there's a lot of alternatives to it. Appreciate the business about constraints, budget, but I'll leave it there.
Yep, thank you. I think the concerns have been expressed. There's a couple of supplementary follow-ups, and I think if I bring in Councillor Haller.
Thanks, Mark, for your words just now. But many of our community as members get a lot of questions about gullies. In fact, in the feedback that we had off Facebook to the committee today, an awful lot of it was about the state of gullies and why can't Torvine do more about gullies, because a member of the public perceives that the water's going down the street and it's not going into the sewerage system, so that's obviously an issue with the drains. So what is the threshold that's needed before a gully sucker would go to a block drain? Because we see gullies that are continuously blocked for long periods of time that are not being attended. And as members, we do get that question asked a lot about the local gully, which is understandable because of the nature of only having one gully sucker. But surely there is a need for more gully suckers, because there is an awful lot of gullies that are in the borough, I believe, that potentially are needing to be done on a more regular basis.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if you'd like to respond to that. Mark, if I bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks, Councillor Hall. Thanks for the question. Yes, it's the criteria really is that we've got regions within, so the borough is split up into specific regions, and every gully should be attended to where possible as part of that routine. It does get interrupted slightly during emergencies and events of storm conditions, but they should return and then continue on that work. There are challenges sometimes in terms of getting access to these gullies, particularly where there's parked vehicles. And again, that's part of my review. So we just don't leave the gully sucker crew to their own means. It's a whole support system. So I've already mentioned about street scene and sweepers, but I also want to include traffic officers so they engage with communities in advance and with members in advance. So they've got time scales so we can liaise with residents, because often it's in their own interest to move their vehicles so that we can get access to these gullies. So it's building that resilience within the communities, isn't it? I suppose it's a case of making sure that the infrastructure that we have is working first of all, and moving on from that. So that's the plan going forward. But to answer your question directly, every gully should be addressed and cleansed where possible. If I may, Chair, can I come back quickly onto Councillor Hall's question? Councillor Ashley's question. If Councillor Hall is content with that response.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Please go ahead.
Councillor Stewart, sorry. Sorry, what we're talking about as well, sorry, what was about the regional collaboration, that's what I want to speak about, Councillor Ashley, is a case of, there's a Department for Transport response that was published following the recent storms a number of years ago. And what they're looking at there is, they're looking at regional collaboration as well. So, for example, if one area within Gwent, for example, was struck by extreme weather conditions, is exploring how the neighbouring authorities can align their response to support that authority as well. So no authority is left on its own. So that's in the background, and that's something that the County Surveyors Society, which was made up of the directors and heads of service across Wales, is considering how we respond to that. And because I think what they found previously is that in the previous extreme weather forecast, the regional collaboration was somewhat ad hoc, and they want to try and align that better. So yeah, if that Councillor Ashley helps in terms of your concerns, and I'm quite happy to discuss further if that helps.
Could I come back very briefly, please, Chair?
Okay, briefly.
Yeah, I think a two-pronged attack. I mean, some councils have gone down the line of naming all their equipment. I love that idea. But at the same, if we could do something like that, it would be popular. Because gullies and equipment are popular. At the same time, collaboration at the top level seems logical as well. two-prong attack. We get what we can out of the community and add at that level seems a brilliant idea.
Okay, I think this is helpful for us in looking at our recommendations from this committee. Councillor Owen, I see you'd like to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ashley. I know we have named some of our waste vehicles, so you know that is in plan. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, and members have been really concerned about the amount of gully suckers that we have. But I think, you know, we're all aware of the constraints on the budget. But I think work being done by Mark Harris and the team, you know, is really positive. But I think the key is being proactive rather than reactive. So I'm hopefully, with the collaboration we're doing with Street Scene, with the traffic officers, we can hopefully reduce the amount of times that the gullies get blocked. You know, so I think it's a positive move. But hopefully the resources will come in. You know, we'll all have a magic wand and we'll be able to go out and buy a brand new gully sucker. But, you know, we all know the situation we're in at the moment.
Okay, I think the sentiments of the Scrutiny Committee are fairly clear. Councillor Evans, I think your supplementary has been partly covered.
I can come in to coordinate some of this. Yeah, Councillor Ashley said about the scarabs, but we've also got majors, which is the next size up, because the scarab is quite a small unit. I mean, are we using them to coordinate? But also, if the flooding is quite severe, have we got any separate water pumps that can unblock these things to get rid of the water without calling anyone in? The thing is, the water collects, so we need to get rid of it as quick as possible. So, I mean, the major it's a lot bigger than the scarab, and it'll take more water, whereas the other scarab can. So, it's just a thought that we could use things different. And I work for the neighbouring authority on these vehicles, and these gully suckers, are quite difficult to get, you know, with them working. If they break down, it's not easy just getting a part off a shelf. So, I mean, we need to look at some sort of contingency for that event anyway. So, if anybody can answer that bit.
Thanks, Councillor Evans. I think that's sort of given a bit of extra detail. I don't know who the officers would like to respond to that. Mark, I think your colleagues are sort of suggesting you might be the one for this.
Yes, I'll thank them later for that, Chair. But yeah, I think Councillor Evans, obviously, you have a good experience in and a wide range of expertise in the vehicles, and I'm quite happy to take those comments on board and discuss further with them. But yes, you're right in terms of looking at our resilience. I think we have to have a look carefully in terms of our response. I was only speaking to colleagues yesterday in terms of our out-of-hours service and how that's changed over the last couple of years. I've had about 8 years experience of actually managing emergency services, out-of-hours services in terms of highways and street scene. And it's changed in terms of traditionally winter was your busiest periods, but now even in summer period we're getting some really intense rainfall which really stretches services. And traditionally out-of-hours services have been targeted so that they augmented over the winter period and sort of stood down slightly in the summer. That can't happen anymore. It's got to be continuous through. But yes, we will certainly look at how we respond and how we improve our resilience in terms to deal with these really intense flood conditions that can happen at any time really in terms of rainfall. So I haven't got the exact answer for you, Councillor Evans, but if you want to discuss outside of this meeting, more than happy to take on your lean on your expertise.
Yeah, the only reason I said about separate water pumps for us as an authority, because if you've got a lot of localised flooding, the fire service will be busy elsewhere.
Yeah.
And won't have, they can't be in 6 places at one time. So if we need to be proactive, we need to be there to make sure that we got something to alleviate the situation. So
I think that's a very helpful point, and I think, you can see that you may get some comments coming as recommendations from us in relation to some of this going forward. Councillor Evans, are you happy that the leaves issue has been covered?
Yeah, no, that's great. I just thought, we need to be proactive in a different way, because if we got one gully sucker, it's just not sufficient, Yeah.
I think
Thank you for that. Yeah.
I think we've made that pretty clear, so I think you can get some expectations from us. I'll move on, because I'm conscious we've got a few questions, so if members could be brief, that would be appreciated. So, Councillor Ashley.
I've got the next couple of questions, and Mark's rather anticipated them, strangely enough. 5.3D, you anticipated reporting, strangely enough. Are there any plans to improve the reporting mechanism in order to create a more direct route, better system for members and public during times of emergency? I think you're right in there straight away on that one. I'll give you examples. They are my ward, but they could be anywhere else. The canal got clogged up, for one of the better thing. It's been over a few times. If the gratings on Maindy Way, for instance, it's over. It could equally have been, it was, in the old days, Brooklyn Park, that you solved that one, I hope. I mean, 1 in 1,000 years, but with climate emergency, don't hold your breath, because what happens with water, it always finds a level. I remember seeing the water going down Cumbrand Drive, and it always used to go into over the playground and down a few houses. Now, we've solved that one, allegedly. Mark Strickland, it was really good on that one. I bring Mark Strickland in because I always used to ring him up half the time. And that is one of the problems. I knew the names of people to ring up, and I wouldn't ring them in the weekend, but I was going in on emergency planning, and they used to say, "Who are you? What do you want?" And I didn't care if they said that. And that's the problem. I'm an old hand at this. I was on the Community Council for 30 years. I will be next year. So I had no compunction whatsoever to ring up certain person I knew. Now, I probably shouldn't have been doing that, but that's what I had to do. And if I saw a flood, I knew my way through it. But how should we do that formally?
Okay, I think the question is about the reporting mechanism.
Yeah.
And the most direct route and the best system for members in particular.
I give that example because I used to know the borough engineer, and I went through the people I knew, which is more important than worrying about who you go through to.
Noted, but I think not all members will have that corporate memory. So if I could ask Mark or colleagues to respond to that. I think Leanne is going to come in.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Ashley. Obviously, you asked specifically about during out of hours. Obviously, we do have a call-out system in place with the general switchboard number taking calls and passing it to the standby officers. I don't see it being an issue, but obviously I'd have to defer to colleagues if we could make it, or make the councillors aware of who the standby officers are and whether that could be reported directly to the standby officers. But yeah, apart from that, we obviously have that out of hours contact number so that anything can be reported. And obviously prior to heavy rain as well, we have a system of inspections in place. Our culvert crew are out looking at all the high-risk culverts prior to any reported heavy rain being due to make sure they're clear and clearing anything required. And like I said, the teams will be out then overnight to clear any blockages that are reported through the call-out system.
Thank you for that. And you'd like to come in as well?
Hi, yes. Just to add that in normal working hours, we tend to get the reports through Call to Vine, and I am already in touch with the general manager down there to change the way the flooding is reported, so that on the mapping system, it is overlaid on our side with the nearest gully or the nearest culvert. So, because quite often when they come through, it's unfamiliar the location that they're reporting the flood at. So if we can overlay it with this data, it's a lot easier for our crew to say, well, culvert CE005 is blocked. Can you go down there? It's a lot easier for the crews going forward.
I think that's very helpful. Are you happy with that, Councillor Ashley?
Yeah, I'll come back. Yes, that's good. I have a thing about map references and number references. If the culverts have all got numbers, but I like the idea of Pacific officers, if available. The problem with Court of Vine is it's got that 10-day thing going on. If we as members can have a reference back. There is a debate going on at the moment about Pacific officers and or Pacific Core Centre bits rather than the 10-day thing, because with flood, for me, and I suspect for other members, we want to be able to do half an hour, not 10 days, because it's far too urgent. And I take the view, certainly we're looking at a flood creeping over the canal or Maindy Way, I don't want to be hanging around. Yeah. And I get a little bit shouty on stuff like that. Not nasty, shouty.
I think the point's taken, and I think the offer around the standby officers is a helpful one.
My next
question
is very similar, which is, I will do that as well. And it's along similar lines. With regards to emergency planning, members are concerned around officer capacity and corporate memory. Because if experienced officers left their roles, what is Torvine about protecting? Remember, Mark Strickland is one of them. I know you've got very experience of, but Mark Strickland knows where the plugs that used to know where the plugs and pipes were in the canal. I have wonderful conversations, bearing in mind I'm probably the member with the longest memory about bits of canal and rivers. I was in the middle of the 2020 flood.
I think the question is now understood. And if I could ask officers...
David, can I just say one thing about this? I need to make this point. Members have as long a memory as some officers do on this, and that's the point. We don't have the capacity either as members on this one. Why would we, members? We got new, and I could possibly come off in the next term. The point is, it's about members' capacity to remember as well on this one. I make that point because we get older and we go, that capacity comes out of the members' memory as well. So I think it's important, I make this point, that you're very energetic officers, and we got the same with members. That capacity goes.
Okay.
And it's important.
I think if we can give the officers the opportunity to come in, but I think Councillor Owen has offered to respond first. So thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, David. My mic wouldn't work there. I don't think it's possible to sort of give phone numbers out or contacts, because you don't want all members ringing officers every weekend. You know, I don't think that's fair. But maybe an email address where the standby officers are on hand, and they will be sort of monitoring that and could possibly get back. But I certainly wouldn't want our officers to have constant phone calls, because you imagine there's 40 councillors. But obviously, when we know that there is a flood risk over the weekend with bad weather, then, you know, we could sort of make sure that an officer is sort of covering an email over that weekend or out of hours.
Thank you for that. I think the second part was a bit about the officer capacity, so I think Mark's going to come in on that one.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a good point that you make, Councillor Ashley, in 2 points, really. One is obviously succession management. That's key, isn't it? And as you say, with you've got experienced officers leaving, it's just getting that information in their head down into an efficient infrastructure plan. And that's, I think, something that traditionally across the board, councils have been weak at. And we're quite lucky with some of the staff that have left us recently. They've taken great pains to share that information and document it. And also, we're very fortunate in some places. They're very keen, like yourself, Councillor Ashley. They've emotionally invested into their roles and constantly contacting us to make sure everything's okay and to help if they can. So we're quite fortunate on that, but that shouldn't be taken for granted. And efficient information gathering and recording is key, and we're working on that as well. So that's that one. However, I take on board what Councillor Owen said as well about availability of telephone numbers, but I would expect an emergency officer, out of hours emergency officer, if they know that a issue has been raised by a ward member, I would expect that officer to go back and update the ward member on that regard, being very much aware that you're the linchpin between the concerned residents and the community as well. So if I can give you that undertaking, Councillor Ashley, that I'll be making sure that that level of service is adhered to.
Thank you for that, Mark. Very helpful. Is that okay, Councillor Ashley? Or?
Yeah, no, Mandy, I totally take what you say there, but having had the 2020 flood in Woodland Road and being the person that took that one, straight away, I rang up someone. I don't want to get on the council's emergency number, who are you? And I need to have immediate confirmation on that. There, Mark's totally right on that. I wouldn't expect individual officers to take that. But once that goes into the pyramid, then a response back on that pretty damn quickly. And the leader came back on that, and the allotment officer came back on that. It has to have the appropriate officers. And it's no good to say, oh, they're on holiday. Or on leave.
I think the point is understood, and I think officers have indicated that, and we may wish to make some comments, of course, in terms of recommendations from this committee.
Yeah, can I just come in very quickly, David?
Small authority.
Okay,
yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks, David. I think I do agree with Mark. You know, we need to have that continuity that officers will come back to members ASAP, over, especially in urgent and out of hours things on standby. So yeah, but I agree with that.
Thank you. I think we've got some clarity around that. If I move on,
could I also come back on corporate memory? That people have been with authority a hell of a long time, and certainly like Mark Strickland went to great pains because he had that project in Brooklyn Park, and I think the people he had working with him are excellent.
Well, I think
I'll put that on record.
I think the positive responses in relation to the officers are noted and appreciated, I'm sure, by the department. So I'll move us on, because I know we've got quite a few questions to go. So, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, my question is, what emergency contingency planning do we have with our partners in the event of flooding? Because National Resources Wales and Welsh Water are mentioned, but what have we got with the emergency services?
You happy to come in on that?
Thank you for your question. So we are working with the Council Civil Contingencies Department regarding the emergency planning around flooding. The standby officers, those that receive the calls and those that action the calls, are aware of all of our high-risk areas. They are also aware of the out-of-hours numbers for Natural Resources Wales, Welsh Water and emergency services on the of who to contact regarding different flooding situations. We have had situations where a culvert is blocked and is overflowing in somebody's garden, and the resident has gone and called the emergency services rather than coming through the council, and then the emergency services have gone and notified us. So there is a two-way communication with them. We are looking in the future to enhance this relationship by flood scenarios. We'll do a tabletop exercise, sort of working out whose role is covered by what, going forward, to ensure that we are clear on roles and responsibilities.
I think that's very helpful. So, thank you. Okay with that, Councillor Evans?
Yeah, as long as we've got something in place, because the emergency services, particularly the fire, are imperative, especially with pumping water. That's the reason I asked that one. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'll bring in now Councillor Haller, question 10.
This is about 5.4, the strategy consultation with the local risk management authority, including the Government Association, National Resources Wales and Welsh Water, make comments. What has been the feedback from the following strategy consultation? Can't get my words out.
Thank you very much for your question. So the feedback has generally been quite positive. The Welsh Local Government Association developed the template for our strategy. So we worked quite closely with them in writing the strategy, and they had sign-off approval for it. They have gone ahead and used our strategy as an example for other councils of what we're doing. The Natural Resources Wales team, they've come back quite positive with the strategy, especially about working together on management of ordinary water courses, particularly where that flows into the Avon Fluid. And Dewar Cymru, they've come back and they are taking up parts of our strategy to work with their wastewater management plan going forward, which was recently published, I believe, 2 days ago. So we're all working together to ensure that our strategies feed into each other.
Thank you for a very positive response.
Thank you. So this is the last question in relation to the report. Then we'll have a series of questions about the strategy action plan. Okay. So I'd like to bring Councillor Ashley in. Some of this may have been covered, Councillor Ashley, but if we'd like to make the question.
Yeah, it's a composite question. I didn't all come up with this either, just so you know. Potential flood risks vary through the different areas of borough, and members thought this could be illustrated a bit more in the report. Members felt an area-based approach is needed. Would you like to comment? We've got some examples of historical stuff. Blind Bram Reservoir flooded in 1923. There was a huge flood there. Woodland Road allotments, which I've already alluded to in 2020. There was also one that we didn't put. It was Cwmbran flood in 2014. Woodland and Abersucken Tree debris. There's a lot of minor floods around the place that were not documented, but members are aware of. Obviously happen from time to time, and it's obviously a worry from members' point of view. I think most members have allusions to various minor floods around. So the illustrations are there all the time, from the really big ones to much smaller stuff. How do you, we can illustrate that from our experiences. How would you deal with this stuff?
Okay. So, Caris, you happy to come in?
Yes, thank you for your question. So we are utilising Section 19 reports to sort of manage and report back our big floods. We have submitted one in 2014 following the flooding around the Cwmbran area. The threshold for Section 19 reports has been lowered in response to climate change. So we now no longer produce them if more than 200 properties are flooded. It's now 20 properties.
Wow.
We could go ahead and lower this if we feel that that is still too high across Torfaen to include our more minor floods, but that is the threshold that has been put in by Welsh Government that we are sticking to. In addition to the 20 properties, if one critical infrastructure area floods, that will require a Section 19 report.
Okay, I think we've got a bit of detail there. Councillor Ashley?
Thank you. With those type of floods and the potential for them, do you actually flag up the potentials? I mean, Steve and I both worried about the potential for, say, Blind Bram Reservoir, because it's still floods. I'll give you that as an example. It's not the only one. There's one we know about. It still backs up when you get heavy rain. Would you have an alert on that? Because I've rang Mark Strickland up numerous times on that one, and he's aware of it, and so seem other people. I mean, the hunt for the elusive water for the canal, it's another little thing, but when I go, that thing's got water up there, so it's why I'm aware of it, and Steve's aware of it because it's in his ward.
Yeah, I think the point we've been trying to make is obviously that it's helpful to, obviously you're looking at sort of risk areas bit by piece by piece, and I think it's then sort of drawing that into the kind of reporting like. But would you like to comment on points made by?
Yes, so thank you for those comments. We are working to develop community flood plans on areas where we've had historical issues of flooding, or we think there could be issues of flooding. Particularly with the Blind Bram Reservoir, that is privately owned and it is classed as a high-risk reservoir by RW. As a result, the owner of the reservoir or the undertaker is required to create an emergency plan for what will happen should that dam breach or should the reservoir overtop. That will then be fed into the community flood plan for that area.
Can I just quickly come back a minute, David? The problem we have with Avon Lwyd and the problem with the Bran is, and I had the Bran go through my ward, is that it's the fastest road. The actual Avon Lwyd is reckoned to be one of the fastest flowing rivers in Western Europe. So it goes up and down like a yo-yo with tremendous amount of water. It's a drain, and the Bran is just as bad. So we know the water goes in and comes out. And unfortunately, 2014's proven that's still not proof against it, but there's a massive great report on that thing. So the only worry is that it gets to the point where that water does the 1 in 1,000 year job. So that's the reason why we as ward councillors get worried about things like that.
Yeah, I can understand the concerns, and I think probably many of those members present will echo those. So I think that's been very helpful, obviously, in relation to community flood plans and certainly some of the emergency plans on other owners of sites. So if you're happy with that, I'll move on to the strategy action plan questions, and I'll bring in Councillor Horler first.
The first 2 questions. On Appendix 1, provide information on the hub for all aspects of flooding for the residents and businesses and sites at risk. So my question is, what will TBC do in order to address the public perspective around flood risk?
Thank you for the question. So as part of the public consultation, we asked residents, do you believe yourself to be at risk of flooding? A lot of the responses came back and said, I live on a hill, I'm not at risk of flooding. Things like that, it's hard to change people's mindsets, but if we can disseminate as much information as possible through social media, letter drop-in, public events, just knocking on people's doors, things like that, just to get across to them that you are still potentially at risk of flooding. We can't stop every single flood that's ever going to happen, but as long as we can share as much information as possible and explain to people what we're here to do and how we're here to help, then I think we can get around the public perception issue.
I think, if I may quickly come in, I think that will be helpful. I think members will take away from this that offer of going to events and things. I certainly something I will be wanting to follow up on.
Yeah, thank you for your reply. I think living in Blaenavon, most people say if it's flooding, we're okay. But we know that our areas in Blaenavon that potentially could flood, and so yeah, thank you for that. It's about getting that risk perception out to the public in all areas of our borough, just not in the south where it's nice and flat-ish. So my question is about working with schools. How will further education to schools to take ahead, and what kind of sorts of outcomes are you looking for? Now, this is obviously about climate change. We're looking at the risks, the climate changes and the things that are happening within our environment, which is really important for the younger generation because they're going to take this planet into future generations. We're talking about the flood risks of the land spoils, the grass and everything else that we're doing around it. How can we go into the schools and give them that knowledge so they can pass that on to the older generations?
Thank you, Nick. Okay, Terence?
Thank you for that. We're looking at targeting all ages in schools. So I know in our younger generation there are some very excited dam builders amongst us. Going into our older generation is a big emphasis on them is climate change. They are scared of the climate crisis and what that'll do to our world. So it'll be just informing them that it is not as scary as it can be made out to be, and we can provide them with information, just little things they can do in their lives, in their homes, especially I know with our new housing developments, little information to them so they can go back and take to their parents going, should we really be doing this? Should we do this instead? It's drip feeding amongst us, and also just getting them excited about water and water courses, and the benefits it can have and the ecological value it can have into Irvine. We are quite a unique area with a lot of interesting spaces, and it's just enhancing those and promoting those to our younger generations and getting them excited about the importance of all of this.
Surely this is a part of the jigsaw that's got to be really looked at on the bigger picture, which is welcoming to hear. Thank you.
I see that Mark's got a hand up. You'd like to come in, Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just in response to the 2 questions, really. The work that colleagues are undertaking, really, it shows how we are striving to deliver on some of the objectives within the county plan. So, for example, we are trying to make our communities more resilient against the risks of flooding, enabling them and educating them so they can take action for themselves, even as a sort of a stopgap until other services can come in to assist and treat the flood. And obviously being proactive in terms of prevention as well. Going on from Councillor Hall's comment about education, Rachel O'Shaughnessy's developed a very good climate and nature emergency training data, I suppose, and resource. And we're discussing how best we can get that into schools as well. We think it'd be really good for them to be used in terms of whether it be primary schools or secondary schools, in terms of getting into studies such as the Welsh Baccalaureate, that sort of thing, in terms of understanding the environment around them as well. So, and how we tailor that resource to be applicable for all school children as well. So that's a bit of work that's going ahead at the moment, which we're striving to share with schools as well going forward, because we know that within schools their time is very precious. They're already under pressure in terms of what they can do. So it's really bringing that information to the fore so that they can incorporate within their existing sort of structure and timescales and timetables. Hope that's helpful.
Sounds very positive. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. That's really positive to hear.
And Councillor Owen, I see, would like to come in.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I mean, officers, like I said, are working hard with communities, and I'd like to see more done. I know the Community Council do the annual ecology quiz and competitions, so I'd like to see us working closely with schools, possibly setting up some topics or competitions. So maybe linking up with Rachel O'Shaughnessy to see how we can work better with schools. But we're all school governors as well. I think the majority of us are here, so we can always take those back as well and encourage the schools to work better with us. And the Climate Action Working Group, David, I think there's an opening there as well, isn't it, to get the schools involved?
Yes, I'll acknowledge that as a member of the Climate Ambassadors Group. Councillor Ashley, you had a point as well?
Yeah, I take your point about hydrology. I mean, half the year we're afraid of water going all over the place. The other half of the year, and I take this as chair of allotments, we're trying to save water, conserve it. And this time of year fills up all our water butts, these great big tanks. Half the allotments are beautifully filled up this time of year, and we're scrabbling around to save water. So with climate change, you've got this double-edged sword. So yes, I take your point about that. And telling children how to conserve water, it's a double-edged sword.
Noted. Helpful. I'll move on to question 14 and Councillor Clarkson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is about paragraph 3 of the strategy, maintain and update database and flood risk assets. So looking just for some more information and explanation, really. They've chosen 5 high priority areas, and we're looking at feeding that data into maintenance and the rest of the general data that being gathered. Can we just explain how those 5 sites are chosen, how it's going to be used, how this information of keeping this data set updated will be useful?
Okay, Caris, you have to go in.
Yes, thank you for your question. So we already do have a database of all of our flood risk assets, so our culverts and our gullies, our drainage ditches across Torfaen. This is updated yearly and shared with NRW to form the national database. This covers the initial cost of installing the flood risk asset. It is the ongoing maintenance cost, the lifetime cost, and should we have to replace that asset, what cost would that be, as well as the value in terms of what protection level it gives. This is shared with NRW and Welsh Government every year, and we update it as schemes occur and change. The 5 priority sites are linked with the computer modelling we do. So last year we modelled the Blaen Bran Brook. This year we modelled the Nant Da. Next year we're planning to model the Dowlais Brook. So our assets in relation to these watercourses, or whatever watercourse we are modelling at the time, will feed into our high priority sites.
Okay, is that helpful, Councillor Clarkson, or anything you want
It is helpful. I do note that most of those are focused further down the valley, and if there are things that it falls on us, it runs down the valley. We've got watercourses further up the valley as well, so it's just understanding really how these are being prioritised, so that it's a more cohesive sort of forward plan.
I think the next question from Councillor Evans links to that quite considerably. So if I can bring you in, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, the part of that then is just we need to how regular waterways monitored to check for any blockages, and how do we link in to feed the public alerts. That's the main focus. How we make sure that the public knows about them.
Happy to go with Karis?
Yep. Okay, thank you for your question. So yes, the culverts, for example, they are split amongst high, medium and low priority. So across all of our watercourses, we have a variant of high, medium and low, and that relates to how often do they block, and if they do block, what impact will they cause. So our high risk culverts, in the winter they are inspected weekly. In the summer, they are inspected every 2 weeks. Our medium is 2 weeks in the summer, 2 weeks in the winter, 4 weeks in the summer, and then our low risk is 6 weeks in the winter and 12 weeks in the summer. These are across all of our watercourses across Torfaen, and it is mainly dependent on if that culvert was to block, what impact in terms of flood risk would it cause downstream.
Okay, Councillor Evans, is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that gives a clear perspective of when they're inspected. No, that's brilliant.
That's good. So if I can move on, because there was a particular kind of supplementary, so I'll bring Councillor Hawley.
So that follows on. Chris, we recently had Garden Lakes looked at. We looked at the waterways. We've explored the potential damage that was up there. I don't know if there was any damage up there, but it's been sorted. The Garden Lakes is a massive volume of water. It's over 10,000 square metres. Is there any other areas within Torfaen that have such an expanse of water?
Thank you for your question. Yes, so Garden Lakes Upper and Garden Lakes Lower are registered as two separate reservoirs. The Garden Lakes Lower is 33,000 cubic meters of water, and Garden Lakes Upper is 34. They've been designated as high-risk reservoirs by NRW because if that dam was to breach, then it would cause a massive flood risk further down. Across Torfaen, the only other one that is owned by us really that would is such an expanse is the Cwmbran Boating Lake. This was recently designated as a reservoir and is awaiting designation from NRW as whether it's high or low risk. I am anticipating it to be high risk, so therefore it is being treated with the same understanding as Garden Lakes in terms of remediation and protection for the areas below. Privately, you've got the Llandegford Reservoir and the Blaenban Reservoir are particular areas of concern.
So that clearly shows the work that's been done up in Garden Lakes has been very useful, potentially because of a risk damage further down the valley. Thank you.
I think that's a very helpful and clear answer. I can see a hand. I think it's Councillor Ashley.
Yeah. Could I ask a question? I know you made a distinction between publicly owned assets and privately owned assets. That's the conversation I think both Steve and I've had. Does it actually matter, the risk? It doesn't really matter whether it's private or public. The only handle that we have on it is if it's ours, we can do something about it. If it's private, it's still a risk. So there's a great load of water up the top of there and it comes down if we don't watch it.
I think that's evident, but I'll give Keris the opportunity to come in.
Sorry to do that on you.
Yes, so it doesn't matter if it's owned by Torfaen or if it's privately owned as the risk. The risk is still the same. As you said, it is just a case of can we do something about it? And particularly in terms of reservoirs, we don't have the capacity to enforce. It is NRW that, as the overarching body, they have the duty to enforce. And if you are a statutory undertaker, there are certain duties and legislation, such as flood risk studies, that you have to undertake to protect that body of water as part of your insurance on it, really.
If I may come back, Chair, we and NRW, I don't know, is it NRWS who are our statutory undertaking of last resort? Sorry to ask that question.
I believe it would be NRW, but because the reservoir is in Torfaen, they would be liaising with us. Over the last couple of months, me and the reservoir team at NRW have become good friends.
It's a horrible question to ask you, I know, but because there have been implications on various things, and I ask that because it just make it clear that in the last resort where things are confused, we unfortunately have a responsibility there, don't we?
I think that's been a helpful response. So you know, I think a fair
Thank you,
point.
Karis.
Obviously, in relation to the risk is there, whether it's private or publicly owned, but I think that clarity has been helpful, so thank you, officers. I'll move on, if I may, to next question, Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm looking at paragraph 6 of the report, real-time asset monitoring. This caused quite a bit of intrigue for us at the planning session yesterday. So a bit more explanation really about how CCT could be implemented, how this would work in practice, because this could be quite a few pinch points around the borough that might need to be monitored. And on the subject of fly tipping, which can block watercourses, in the past, I'm sure all of us as members have had incidents that we've reported, and there's been some who's responsible for clearing it. In some instances, we've got some of the non-statutory organisations in to help out, and natural blockages, which we've already mentioned earlier. So yeah, how would this real-time monitoring be monitored, and how would we respond and act quickly to any blockages which have occurred through fly tipping or natural means?
Karis, you happy to take that one?
Thank you for your question. Yes, so the real-time asset monitoring, it's the idea of it is to work out the peak flow times between rainfall of culverts. So how long between a heavy downpour do we realise, or do we know that that culvert or that watercourse is surcharging? And how much time have we got to respond in a storm scenario to that impact further downstream? We've got several areas across Torfaen, particularly around the British or Wayne Road, where we know that it does often occur. So the standby officers know that these are areas of concern, and they regularly inspect them to ensure that if there are any natural blockages, they are removed to reduce that risk of surcharging, but it is still there. In terms of fly tipping, as far as I understand it, it is the culvert crew's responsibility to remove the fly tipping out of the watercourse and put it onto the curbside, then for the street scene team to come and collect and take it away.
Can I just come in, but would that include rivers and naturally occurring brooks as well?
Yes, so ordinary watercourses and the main river, that would include, yes.
That's very good to know going forward, thanks.
Very helpful. So I think there's a slightly related point from Councillor Ashley here as well.
Yeah, real-time asset management. We did have a good conversation around that. Is there a responsible officer to monitor this, and could we put any volunteer support mechanism? And the people that we had in mind, Linda helped me on this a bit as well, was our anti-litter people, allotment get a bit aerated about it, because Woodland Road, for example, has got the Aben Lwyd round it. We've got the lot that slightly further over, 1, 2 and 3 allotment down there. We've got the Mill Lane lot, and further up, I think the allotments are quite often in the floodplains, and then you've got residents south Sebastian's getting a little bit leery about things happening around there as well. You name it, there could be quite a useful network. And then councillor does, every time I go to the doctor's surgery, I stick my head over the Bram Brook and look at the water in there. It's you know, the old thing they do in harbours where you had indicator. It would actually be quite useful in places to have a harbour type indicator as to what height the thing is. Quite useful. And the other thing that happened, which I was aware of, up at Pont Newydd and up there, when we had that problem with Woodland Road allotment, they did indicate on Facebook there was a blockage up there, and that was incredibly useful because it meant we knew something was happening up there. So, you know, Facebook communication, if you guys are utilising with your volunteer setup with the anti-litter thing, there's quite a lot of stuff going on which could be coordinated quite usefully for very little effort, I reckon.
Yep, I think that's clear. So I think just to refresh, I think the initial point was, you know, is there a responsible officer and what kind of volunteer mechanism we might be able to consider putting in place?
Yes, so thank you for your question. In terms of officer availability, it would be for the Midland Drainage Department, so sort of myself and my colleagues. But going forward with volunteer groups, I know there's a number of community groups around these areas through, as you stated, the allotment groups, but also community councils, climate action groups, those sorts of things. We can utilise those volunteers to assist us in this as well.
It's good to hear there's an openness to take that forward in that way. So if I can take us through the next question, question 18, I think that's yourself, Councillor Haller.
The review to adopt recommendations regarding the ecological report on One Avon, a bog in Glenavon. Please could you update us on the scope of work and the costs associated with this project?
Yes, so absolutely. Sorry, yes, absolutely. So the Wayn Avon Bog scope of the report was completed by our ecological team, and the general understanding of the report was that the peatland bog is drying out. And as we all know, peatland is exceptionally useful for a carbon store, but also this is the source of the Aben Lwyd. So by re-wetting the bog and helping it retain water, we are able to reduce the flashness of the Aben Lwyd River. The estimated costs of completing this work is around £20,000. So we're looking at funding streams through the Flood Risk Management Grant, as well as I know my colleagues in ecology have got funding left over with their pots. In addition to the re-wetting and improvements of the peatland bog and the conditions of the peatland, there is a scope to turn it into a nature site. So connecting it up with Garn Lakes, creating little walkland areas through the bog, so you can actually go and see the ecological value and the wildlife that are there. And we are working with the Commoners group on this as well. They are very, very heavily invested in this project as well.
Nick, yeah.
So this would be important to actually to follow through to conserve this area?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Sorry, if I can bring in now Councillor Clarkson for the next question. Follows on quite well, I think, from this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It follows on very nicely. Expanding on what's just been said, we've got the wider upland area, which is a hugely valuable resource for holding back water, and at the moment is sort of quite unmanaged. So I know there's been recently an uplands management plan put in place. So how will that uplands management plan and anything that's happening in the way of flood risk sort of improve the way that our water can be stored and maintained in our uplands and not actually enter so quickly into our watercourses and become runoff water?
Keris, you okay with that one? Yep.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Thank you very much for your question. Yes, so as with the Wayn Avon Bog, the same officers are working together on the uplands management. Going forward with this one, there are smaller areas of peatland in the upland that we are looking to commission reports on for the ecological value and what we can do there to help them retain water and store carbon. But in addition to that, we're looking at more natural flood risk management measures. So looking at creating leaky dams, which will help slow the flow of the water going through the uplands and retain some of that water in that area, which doesn't then take away from the ecological value and biodiversity of those areas.
No, I think that's very helpful, comprehensive.
Yeah,
outline.
if I could come back quickly. Yeah, that sort of management would actually improve the biodiversity in the area, but there's obviously associated sort of cost and that type of thing. So have we got budget to carry this out?
Yes, so under the flood risk management grant that we received from the Welsh Government, there is scope then to go and implement these natural flood risk management measures. There is, within Welsh Government, they are pushing for us to utilise these measures elsewhere, and there is scope then to go and apply for further funding should we need it for these areas.
Great, I look forward to hearing more about that in the future. Thanks.
Very positive, so thank you for that. So again, we're still on uplands, and I think a little point from Councillor Ashley.
Yeah, we obviously got uplands below the Aberdranners, up on the Mynydd Man, and we even got it on the other side to some extent with the area David covers. But it's what problem we've got. The new town is built on top of a lot of springs and streams. I've even got one going down the middle of my road. Even Cwmbran was built nearly 75 years ago. Next year,
75
celebration.
years.
Yeah, and every street in the place has a stream going down it. And what I've got in terms of upland management, there is a dichotomy between clearing and not clearing, as sticky water course is a technical term, and it slow down the water. Is this covered with supplementary planning guidance I've got? But if you go up further and you get above the tree line, above Blind Bramwood, you got that problem obviously up there. It's very sticky. You've got commons up there, and then on the opposite side you've got you've got a much lower tree line there. It's not a common over there, but you've got the same problem. You've got water goes. So David and I were talking about it the other day. Streams all over the place, and when they made the new town, they had to put all this stuff in there to bring it down to the middle, where it all feeds into Bran. I mean, the town centre's riddled with streams, as you well know from the flood schemes, Llantarnam floods. So, how do we do this? Do we do the same as we do up the top end of the valley, where there's plenty of room to do that stuff? Or do we get it out of the way? And it's a dichotomy which we're not sure about. We'd be guided by yourselves.
Okay, are you happy to formulate some response to that?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, the southern end of the borough is a lot more urban than the northern end of the borough. So any sort of flood risk management scheme will be done on a case-by-case basis. Going forward, we'll be utilising our colleagues in ecology and environment, as they have more of an understanding of this than myself. I am a drainage person, but it will be a cross-department discussion going forward and working together on this. Yes.
So I'll come back very briefly. Those of us that have been on the ecology tour several times see what happens in Llantarnam, because I will put on record that the bottom end of the valley is actually a medieval floodplain, and going from Woodland Road allotment right down to Llantarnam Abbey, that they wanted it to flood. So we got the problem of what do we do with a twice, 3 times a year medieval floodplain that we're now putting a modern estate on. That I thought it was a really, really interesting problem. Did you know that, by the way?
Okay, Keris.
No, I did not know that it was a medieval floodplain, but I am aware that groundwater flooding is the last source that we are due to investigate, and we will be investigating this over the next 6 years as part of the plan. and taking forward working with other lead local flood authorities on what they're doing in their areas to adopt the best practice and implement it in our area.
Yes.
It's a helpful answer. I'll
Thank
move
you.
us on.
No, it's a very good answer. Thank you. And that medieval floodplain was the agriculture they used in those days, and it's not very desirous in the middle of a new town these days.
I think whilst the historical perspective is useful, it's probably a little bit superfluous to this point. So I'll bring in the next question, which is about which does lead on very well from this. So I'll bring in Councillor Parish.
Thank you, Chair. Some schemes will relate to football pitches and other recreational areas within the council leases. This has a cost to the relevant organisations, yet the action taken can benefit the wider community. How can this be supported? How can these organisations be supported financially? That's what I'm asking.
Okay, I don't know. Is this Keris or Mark? Would you like to come in on this? Oh, Leanne.
To be honest with you, we've not looked into this this aspect. Obviously, when we again bid for works through Welsh Government, it does take in. They tend to, or they absolutely need evidence that properties are flooding, and by that I mean residential properties. So they can't take into account these areas because they're not residential. We can look at them and see where we can help them from small-scale schemes and the likes of natural flood risk management, which is a relatively cheaper way of dealing with flood risk. If you have any specific areas that you're concerned about, then by all means bring those to us. I don't know if you're referring to the ones along the Avon Lwyd, for instance, and we could work with NRW who are responsible for those areas. But by all means, bring the information to us where you've got concerns, and we'll look to see how we can support them.
I think Keris would like to add a little.
Yes, so yes, so I know the football pitches, particularly in New Inn, there are some issues with waterlogging on those pitches, and where we have been asked, we are able to then provide consultation in terms of drainage of how the people that rent those pitches can go ahead and apply for funding or do schemes to remove the water away from those pitches. So we're kind of acting as a technical support in that sense.
Is that helpful, Councillor Parish?
Well, yes, I'm glad to hear there will be help for these people. But in the past, I haven't seen much support for these organisations, especially when large trees needed to be cut down, so the council was saying, and they expected the organisations to foot the bill, which they did. They have in quite a few. At times I've seen it happen, and I don't really think it's fair. From my point of view, it isn't fair. They're not having enough support.
I think it's a fair point, and I think I found it helpful facing a similar situation in my ward with a particular organisation, and so I know I'll be picking this up outside of the meeting to ask. But I know you wanted to come in again, Leanne.
Yeah, I just wanted to say in those instances, obviously, like I said, we've got, when we bid for money, it has to be spent in particular areas. However, we do have a small pot where we can look if we can help in any way, and it does relieve specifically flood risk issues. I don't know if the tree that you're referring to specifically, I don't know if you could tell me where that was. But if it was alongside an allotment, for instance, and that was the group that you were referring to, no, it's just something that we could look if it does specifically deal or have an effect on flood risk downstream. We may be able to use our funds to help in those instances. We may not be able to fund it completely, but if there are instances where we can use the flood funding to help in those instances, then we're happy to look into that for you. So by all means, bring them to us. If we can't, then obviously we can't. But we need individual basis. If we can, then we will.
The specific one I'm thinking of is in the past. It did cost the organisation some thousands of pounds. It wasn't cheap. And I thought that was very unfair because it wasn't on their playing fields. It was apart from that. So I don't want to go into detail now with that particular one.
No, we were just, I was just going to say that it may be that in the past we didn't have these funding streams and unfortunately we weren't able to help. But like I said, individual cases, look at on an individual basis, and if we can help, by all means bring it to us, and we will.
Right, thank you for that.
That is helpful, and as I said, I'll certainly be picking up on that. So I notice that we have Mark to come in and then Linda.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to give some context, I guess, in terms of the service and what we can and can't do. Obviously, the service, as been explained, is very much dependent on Welsh Government grant funding, as is a lot of the services that we provide. And with that in respect, as Leanne has suggested, there are set criteria in terms of how and when we can draw down that grant funding, conditions on what we spend it on and how we spend it. But Councillor Parish, please be assured that where we can, we will assist, and as has been mentioned, at the very least, we'll share and collaborate with community groups to give them sort of advice, technical advice and support as well, going forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Clarkson.
Just a very quick bit of information. Welsh Rugby Union have been offering funds to help improve pitches in the very recent last funding season. What will happen this funding season, I don't know. Not helpful for football, but for rugby clubs or any pitches that are being used for rugby on a local level, that might be helpful information.
Thank you for that. I think that's helpful for the officers to be aware as well. So your question next.
Oh, thank you. Caught me on the hop there a little bit. It's sort of roughly around the review of NRW maps and reviewing of flood risk data, but it's more specific to what we can offer residents that we identify as in these very high risk categories of likely flooding. So the question being, what assistance and advice is there in place for residents regarding actually putting flood prevention measures in place for themselves? And that again would be about any help with costs or technical advice, that type of thing.
Okay, Keris is happy to come in.
Hi, yes, thank you for your question. In terms of property resilience measures or property protection measures, in the event of a flood situation, where we have resources available, we can offer sandbags in an immediate flood situation. We do have some sandbag guidance, on the Torfaen website that we are looking at. But in terms of if you know you're at risk of flooding, what can you implement in your property? We have guidance to update to the website in terms of retrofitting suds to your property, a floodgate, things like rainwater beds, just to sort of slow the flow and collect the water and divert it away from your property. Little things like that. We've got guidance for developers and housing associations, for people that move into the area, about driveways. So changing your driveway, if you put in to change your driveway from permeable to impermeable, what can you do to reduce the flood risk elsewhere on your property? Little things like that will contribute and will reduce the risk of your property from flooding.
Yeah, just come back on that because Mark may be able to expand on this for me. I'm looking at specifics, people who are more likely to be flooded along the course of the Afon Lwyd, possibly Afon Terrace in Pontywennydd and the Freeland area, which are immediately on the Afon Lwyd and are very urban. And about flood defences, not about sandbags or putting water butts in, not about runoff, but actual at risk from the Afon Lwyd. We could do much to. They're the ones that I see the NRW alerts about. Is that area specifically that I see most often? So what help we could actually offer the residents in that area to put some peace of mind and protection in place.
I'll bring in Mark, who's got a hand up first. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's going back to Councillor Clarkson. It's going back to previous discussions that we had in terms of how we engage with the community and the offer really to engage face to face with affected residents and communities. I think that's useful as well, because you've got some excellent advice and guidance both online and through NRW, but sometimes it's helpful to meet with the communities and view the concerns by residents as well. And you have our sort of undertaking that we will support those residents going forward as well, in terms of offering technical advice as well, in terms of what they can do to protect their properties, and then discuss further on what the plans are in terms of any interventions that come forward as part of the flood risk management strategy. So I hope that's helpful. But as I say, with any members that are concerned, more than happy to discuss offline and offer support to come and attend on site or public meetings as well, just to discuss with the wider communities.
Okay, Councillor Clarkson, anything you want to add on that?
It sort of stops short of where residents in that situation would like to be. You know, it's not a huge expense to put a floodgate in, but it is an expense, and it would be good to have that information available for them as to if they need assistance, where they can get it from, to add on to that technical advice.
So I think that's probably sort of suggestions in relation to some information being made available. So I'm sure you're picking it up, as it were, from us. So, okay, you'll be glad to know we've only got 2 more questions. So I will bring in Councillor Evans now.
Thank you, Chair. This is to do with water quality. Will water quality and biodiversity be monitored before and after the schemes have been implemented? Excuse me. Flooding, following flood events, really, because we need to make sure there's no detrimental impact has occurred, considerably with public health, contaminated water, sewage water. So, can somebody give me an answer on that? That is a concern with where the water, we don't know where it's come from, really. So, yeah.
Yes, I think Caris is happy to come in.
Yes, thank you for your question. So yes, under the Water Framework Directive, we have to make good status for all of our watercourses across Torfaen. In terms of flood schemes and flood defences, our ecology team are brought in for consultation on all of our flood alleviation schemes going forward, for comment, and they will meet with contractors to give sort of a toolbox talk on the do's and don'ts to protect the water quality in that area. In terms of flood events, the team who are on standby, or who are, if it's during the working hours, our culvert crew, are aware of what the indicators look forward to in terms of contaminated or polluted water. But we do encourage anyone, if you are out and about and you see water that looks contaminated or polluted, please do report it to us so we can go ahead and investigate the cause of this pollution and rectify it where we are able to, or sort of an enforcement notice where applicable.
Councillor Evans, anything you want to add on that? Are we frozen or? No.
Did you want me to come back in? I just think it's a valid point that we need to be looking for some of this water. I'm concerned, particularly if it's any sewage water that's been pumped into the water system. So,
yeah.
Sorry, I was a bit late coming back in. My mic wouldn't work then. Yeah, I think it's important to add as well that NRW are on the case as well, so they will, randomly test our watercourses as well. So I think, just to have that added security after, we will obviously test as we go forward, but NRW also take that stance as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Owen. I think Mark Thomas has got his hand up too.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, so follow on from that, really, yes. Officers are working closely with NRW at the moment, and we are investigating areas where we have concerns, Councillor Evans, where potentially there is material getting into watercourses that shouldn't be there. So we are actively working together to ensure that we bring those people to account as well, whether that be sort of Welsh Water or private individuals.
Chair.
Councillor Ashley?
Yeah, I also noticed after the 2020 flood in the Woodland Road and probably any of the things on the main rivers that there was a rise in pernicious weed. There's not much you can do about it, but it was something I noticed when we had that one. We had a lot of weed that we didn't have on Woodland Road allotment come over the allotment. It was a bit, not Japanese knotweed, but other weeds. And then the other thing that came off the Bran, which something your officers, we had a building site on the Bran at that same flood, and there was some, I did report it, there was some seepage came off the building site. It was unfortunate for them, but there was some oil spillage that went in. We don't know where that came from, but that's the other sort of issue. It went over momentally went over the allotments. So issues like that are quite, from what I noted, there was a sheen on the allotment, which luckily enough the bioremediation got rid of, because we were told to do bioremediation down there. So issues like that for allotments and growing areas is quite important if they do get flooded.
Yeah, so it's good to know that sort of some of the remedial actions and reports were taken forward in that way. So, Councillor Clarkson, you've got the final question, but also something I think specifically on sandbags.
Yeah, if I take the next question first, it's sort of more of a public safety issue that sort of came up yesterday. Some of our high risk areas include footpaths, recreation areas, and active travel routes along the Avon Lwyd, as we've sort of already alluded to. We're seeing more incidents where the public are getting into difficulty on our static ponds and reservoirs when they're frozen, the Avon Lwyd when it's in flood, particularly dog walkers. So what are we doing, or what could we do in the way of comms and safety communications we could put out there to warn people of the risks during high water content times, and also in the cold snaps when we have freeze-overs? I see, South Wales Fire and Rescue put these warnings out, but could we do more as a local authority to get the information out there that during times when the rivers are in flood and our static waterways are frozen, they really are a significant risk and should be treated with the respect and kept away from.
Okay, do you want to come in? Karis? Yep.
Yes, so thank you for your question. Absolutely, we can do more to disseminate that information. Sort of linking our comms with the NRW flood alerts, or where we've received reports of flooding, disseminating that information to our comms to then share with the wider area is vital to sort of protect the members of the public.
Okay. I see Mark's got a hand up. I'll ask Mark first to sort of see if there's anything to add on that.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Clarkson, it's a good point to make, and just to give you an undertaking that I'll raise that through our resilience officers as well, and our comms team, to ensure we make that linkage as well. So a specific undertaking from me to follow up on that point.
Very much appreciated, Mark.
That's great. Councillor Ashley, something brief?
Yeah, I just like to reiterate what Linda said, because to mind, we've got the bit from Pontyddryn all the way down to the end of the borough alongside Avon Lwyd. There is, as you said, I think yesterday, it's in your ward as well, it's built on the dyke. The active travel route goes all the way down the dyke, and when it floods over, and certainly when in the boating lake, there gets quite extensive flooding down there at times. It's meant to, going back to my point
It's as much when it's fast flowing, because that's when people are more at risk. They won't go close to it when it's flooded, but when it's fast flowing and at the top of its bank, it really is raging. And
can I just say that Woodland Road allotments and the other allotments are right next door to it. The chair said his house is not far from it either. Yeah. And when you get down there, it's fast flowing and it floods over. It's
I think the point is made, and I think we have taken quite a lot of officer time. So
go on.
I'm going to ask Councillor Clarkson. She had a question about sort of the sandbags. It may have been covered, but I just wanted to check that.
It's just expanding slightly on that, please, if I could, Chair. The sandbag policy seems just a little bit not as clear possibly as it could be. We often get contacted out of hours. It's silly o'clock in the morning or on weekends, with people having problems with surface runoff, which may be freak flooding, incidental flooding, and may not be on high-risk identified areas. But still, they've got a problem with his water sumping into their property from runoff from elsewhere. So it's just about how that out-of-hours policy is managed. It says that a designated officer can offer, an intervention. There's often a shortage if there's a flood event going on of the sandbags which are available. So it's about more than high risk areas. It's about the areas which have the flash flooding as well. So what could we do to improve that?
Okay, I think we've covered some of this, but if there's any further comments, please, Caris, and Mark's got his hand up. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Clarkson, it's an issue that is widespread across the country, really, in terms of that. The clear issue is really in getting the message. We'll certainly look at the sandbag policy and be a little bit more definitive. But the expectation is where there is a designated and expected heavy period of rain, then residents should prepare for themselves. And obviously we can provide sandbags in dire straits, but obviously our resources at that time are best employed, obviously trying to tackle the root cause of that flooding. So we might not have the available resource to deliver sandbags as well. So with that in mind, residents are best advised to really prepare as best they can for themselves. However, if there is an issue and we're tackling it and a property has been inundated as a result of a failure within the highway network, for example, sort of block gullies and stuff like that, then I think we're duty bound to try and do all we can to offset that impact. But we'll certainly look and revisit at the sandbag policy, because it has to be clear. And again, I think that's another element I think we could benefit from our better comms as well. And I'll take that on board as well. So we really build, again, resilience and manage expectation within our communities.
Yep, that pretty much covers that. It just needs to be more clear, and we need to build that resilience. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So, officers, you'll be pleased to know that that's the end of our questioning. So I'll just check that nobody has any further questions. I think we have had a very full opportunity to ask questions. So I'd like to thank the officers for their time and their contributions, and then ask if they'd now please like to leave the meeting, and the same for the executive member. The same thanks go to you, Mandy, and then we'll put forward our deliberations. But I would remind members that we are still on camera. Thank you very much. Okay, so I can advise members that officers have now left, so it's our opportunity to come forward with recommendations. What we were asked to do was to review the flood risk management strategy, determine whether it will enhance the Council's responsiveness and resilience to future flood risks, and considered some key questions. But essentially it's our opportunity to provide some recommendations to the exec member on areas for improvement or development in that strategic approach. So I'll open it up for any thoughts. I think a few have become evident as we've gone through this, and I think Geraint's taken some notes. But does anybody want to kick off? Linda. You're on mute, Linda.
Your mic's on. Yeah.
Sticky buttons today for some reason. Yeah, I was just wondering if Geraint could go through the ones he's picked up first, because I think we're going to duplicate. There's some very obvious ones that were in there that I wouldn't want to just raise now when Geraint's already captured them.
That seems an obvious way forward.
I think we've picked up a few points. I just want to, because again, the recommendations come from ourselves rather than from Geraint. But I think taking from the top, we had something around the communications part. I think there was an undertaking to take some action forward, but I think we had some clarity around sort of there being willingness to have physical copies. I think there's a recommendation that I'm just making a suggestion here. There's a suggestion that there's a publicising the opportunity for events so that members are aware of that and can take that forward in their own areas. Are people happy? That's a starting point from me. Linda.
Yeah, that sounds good, because they're the ones on there. It's Steve's suggestion, but I took on board his point about the pumps.
Yes.
That would be something that would be in the toolkit that could be used all year round now, but would be very useful to have to assist the fire service in these unusual weather events.
It'd have to be mobile pumps, because they need to be on a trailer or something like that, because
exactly.
You know, we control without vehicles.
The emergency contact point and the direct responses to members was something that I wrote down and I find very important. It's very frustrating when we can't communicate with our residents because we've contacted control and they've just said, oh, we'll pass it on, and then we don't hear any more until the residents get back to us to say that they've possibly seen someone.
If I can just go back slightly, because I think there's also, we had quite a lot of discussion about the resilience of the grit suckers, etc., the gully suckers rather. So I think there was a suggestion.
That's the whole point.
That's a different point again.
Yep.
It is. Can I come in? Can I come in on the real time asset?
Yeah, Stuart and then Nick.
Real time asset management, monitoring by the community and the and volunteers. That was one we did give quite a lot of time to. I think Linda and I both went at that one.
Nick, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. I think this is about education, and it's about.
Can you did confirm that one, did you, Chair?
Sorry, Stuart.
You did confirm real-time asset monitoring?
Yes, we did. Sorry.
I didn't hear you.
Sorry. So, Nick.
I think this is about education and getting the word out to people why flood management is so important. So the idea of getting into education and moving that forward, and also talking about the biodiversity of our landscapes to stop the soil spillage and why we're doing that. I think this year we've had the situation where the 30% of the grass cutting has been done, but there hasn't been a specific reason really pushed out for it. And I think now we need to say why we're doing it in a more educational basis about the spillage and the soil, and the changing the biodiversity to prevent flood damage, but also the education to the younger generation to move it forward for the future generations, I think is paramount within this to move it forward.
So I think it was a clear recommendation. I think it's two parts there, Nick, wasn't it? One was actually about the sort of public information and comms in relation to how by changed practices on land use management are actually assisting flood risk management. And then there was a piece about actually sort of making sure that there is a planned programme of engagement with schools where there will be evident interest and clearly helps develop future generations' awareness. So there was a point I would like to pick up, because I know you were quite clear, Norma, in terms of recommendation about looking into getting additional gully sucker and support. So do we want to include that within the recommendations?
Yeah, and the collaboration across the boroughs.
Yeah. Sorry, Norma, did you want to come in? Apologies.
Yeah, yes, I would like to see that in writing, because it's been years and years the council have been on, well, the members have been on and on about it, and I'm sure it's getting on to 20 years that that's been brought up. Yeah. And they were going to share one with another, I think it was Blaenau Gwent, but that didn't come around at all. Blaenau Gwent held on to it. So yes, that's something.
And I think it ties into the collaboration, as you said, the joint approach, but certainly I think the point that we were making was that the increased flood incidents means that we do need to increase capacity. I think you made the point very clearly. Sorry, Norma, I cut across you, apologies.
Yeah, but the gullies, you know, they were saying they don't realise how many blocked ones we've got, and it's not blocked only in the bad weather. It's caked, blocked in the fine weather too. You know, and it's very difficult to unblock those. It's worse actually than when it's wet.
With grass growing out of them oftentimes.
Yes, yes.
I think everybody wants to come in. I'm going to ask about my eyesight, I fear, colleagues, is not sufficient to determine which is first. So, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I agree with Norma on that. The thing is, a gully sucker, if you've got one, it can be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's why you need a backup, and you haven't got one. You know, I worked on 3 when I worked for Newport Council, but they're there. The question I was going to put in is, we need to look at our response. How we facilitate that, and how it incorporates into our county plan. Because it's no good having all this if it doesn't link into any strands of our county plan. Because, you know, the reporting mechanisms, we need to make sure that we're engaging with our communities, because they're the ones that matter, and they're the ones that homes or businesses are flooded. So we need to be on top of it, and also have a strategy with other members like the Fire Service to make sure we got emergency provision strategy in place.
Okay, so I think there's a
couple in there.
there's a clear point there about sort of ensuring that the flood risk approach is completely integrated within the county plan, and certainly the action plans. So, and secondly, I think there's a point around coordination, and we want to see the sort of, if you like, the combined emergency plan, is it, Steve, around sort of working with others?
Yeah, well, it's not just a fire service. It has to be NRW, it has to be Welsh Water. Yeah. But they need it. To be honest with you, it's like having a terrorist outbreak where they all got a strategic plan to working in collaborative. Yeah. We need something like that with flooding, because, as I said previously, the fire service can't be in 10 places at once. No. And we need to have a strategy. You know.
It's also community. It's also communities as well. Everybody in the community needs to know where it is.
Yes. Indeed. I'll bring in Councillor Clarkson, then Councillor Ashley, then Councillor Haller.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it as a recommendation that we will do more with the comms.
Yes.
Regarding safety when our rivers and waterways are in flood, not necessarily flooded within the banks, but in flood, and when our static water areas are frozen, and linking in with South Wales Fire and Rescue on that maybe. Yep. And I would also like to see it as the recommendation that they will revisit the policy on sandbags. Yes. To add clarity to that.
Yeah,
brilliant.
It's the one I get the most nagging about, to be honest.
And to be fair, I think there was an acknowledgement of that. I think we tried to signal that there would be some recommendations coming at certain points.
Yeah, so I'd just like to see it in the recommendations. Nothing, that it's revisited and strengthened, and that communication to ourselves as members and the out-of-hours reporting system is ensured. so that
Excellent.
we know what to do.
Great.
Well done.
I think that summarised
Right.
that very helpfully. Stuart.
Mine's, as you would expect from Chair of cross-cutting, is to go off the policy direction. It's no good them saying they're going to visit these, was it 5 areas? It has to be written into county plan, and because we've got these potential risks, the brand and the rest of it, and I think that has to be in concrete, written into concrete, as it were. They're going to do it, not subject to funding, because it's too serious.
Yeah, and I think that ties into the point we asked about, which was actually sort of community level area plans, so that you know, as members, we know what the plan is for our area.
They've demonstrated it already. Refer it back. They've already done the brand, the bottom bit of the brand, which was going on for 20 odd years. They found the money for that. So I think the rest of these have to be done in the same way. It's a good example of what they can do when they want to. They find the grant. So use that as an example. The Brooklands Park example, because that had so many knock-ons without.
Yeah,
and if
I think
they hadn't done that.
My sense is here that, you know, if we can strengthen and make some of these points, then it gives them the ammunition to actually seek extra funding. But I'll bring in Nick now.
I want to go back to gully suckers. Sorry, because I think an awful lot of people were talking about that and the issues that we've only got the one. I think as members, we get an awful lot of people complaining about gullies and where we go. Can we get some clear expectations of what a resident would expect when they actually reported it? Because right now we've got issues that go back not months but years in some cases, and we need to give more clarification to the resident on clearer expectations on how long it's going to take and when it's going to be taken. I appreciate that we've only got one gully sucker for the whole of Torvine, which obviously, if that was a possibility to increase, would help.
We picked up the
Yeah, but having said that, I think it's giving residents of Torvine a clearer expectation on how and when they're going to get their gullies cleaned.
So there's a recommendation here, I think, in terms of if residents report flood issues, there needs to be a clear response as to the timeliness of and what will happen and when.
Yeah.
Is that
it's as much about blocked road gullies as well.
Yeah, it is.
Because that prevents flooding. This is a preventative action that we keep them clear. You know, a lot of the time we rely on residents to report that the road gullies, the road drains are blocked. Because the routine maintenance on side roads isn't always sort of in place.
And I directly experienced this back in 1999 when my neighbour's garden flooded due to blocked gully in West Pontyard. So yeah, okay.
I've got one more that I put up.
One for Stuart then, and then Norma.
Yeah, I was impressed by the quality of the answers we got off the officers, and I just think that the way it was presented today was impressive. We need to make sure that stays in place. Action planning from officers. I don't think that's gone over the other answer I gave you, but it needs to remain. And any officers that are not in the establishment, i.e. Mark Strickland, who was the practical out there one, just make sure we get full establishment, because this is far too important not to have it. So make sure that reporting mechanisms and officers' establishment in this department, because it's rather important that we have them in place. It's the same thing as the gully sucker. We need the equipment and the officers in place. We'll make sure that it's coming along that line, sensibly put.
Yeah, I think there was, I picked up something from Mark that sort of, you know, as there's a need, we need to look at bringing extra resource in. So I think we do need to put that sort of point. So thank you for that. Exactly. I will remind members that we've gone past 12 o'clock, so if you are happy to continue, then I'm not going to try and put a guillotine on, but just mindful of time. So, Norma.
Thank you. Signage, you know, on travel ways. Did that come up?
No,
I think you said something about that, Linda. the community needs to know if a patch would be sort of, you know,
You're talking about the risk
canal,
around
the canals and the rivers.
Canals
You know,
and
they
rivers.
could
Yeah,
be,
good
you know,
point.
if there's heavy rain, they could, you know, overflood.
Yeah.
Keep away.
Yeah, well, not keep away, just tell people that it's a probability that this could happen.
There's
And
a
then,
lot of places to cover in there.
Yeah.
yes,
So I
yeah,
think
That
there's a
might
bit
be
about
the issue.
there's a bit about. So I pick up two things here. There's one a bit about the comms generally, flood risk,
yes,
etc. But there's
yeah,
the comms specific. There's a flood alert. You know, we expect, say, the Avon Floyd to rise by 4 feet,
yeah,
3 feet.
Yeah.
So we're putting this flood alert out to members, public, etc., to be aware. And it goes back to your point about some of the active travel routes, and of course,
It's
yeah,
not all just about floods, David. It's about when the river is fast flowing.
yes,
So
yeah,
it's you know, if we put all the emphasis on when it's about to flood, you know, the incidents that we've had, it's been in flood. That's a different thing
yeah,
yes,
to actually flooding. We
yeah,
just need to make people more aware because we're getting more incidents of people, their dogs going in and they're going in after them,
yeah,
and people
yeah,
going after dogs on frozen lakes, that type of thing. And South Wales Fire and Rescue are doing this. We just need to join in with them as a local authority.
I did suggest level indicators on bridges. It's a very simple thing, you know, like the
yeah,
depth of the water.
yeah,
That's a very,
NRW have got some on the
no,
Avon Lewid.
but they haven't got it on Woodland Road Bridge. You could put it on there, and you could put it on the main bridge at Ed Logan Way, and that. The level indicators are really, really useful things. People love those.
all right. So
yeah,
I think we've got a suggestion here that there could be some permanent marking, such as those level indicators at key points to make it evident, which again picks up a bit, I think, on your point, Linda, in terms of the flow. Obviously, it doesn't get the speed of
yeah,
the flow, but it does give an indication of how levels have been rising. So are we able to capture that one? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I think Steve next, and then
Yeah, thank
did
you,
you have a hand up,
David.
Nick? Yeah, Steve, and then
Uh,
Nick, and then Linda.
The question, I'm going to go back to the gully sucker. We got one gully sucker. So regarding routine maintenance of each gullies within a thing, is it practically impossible if we get emergencies that it then unable to complete this task of routine maintenance? So in other words, they're cleaning a gully up in Glenavon, and they're doing all the ones in Glenavon on a certain day, but
Yeah.
they get a block one in Cwmbran.
Yeah.
They've got to leave the Glenavon ones, come to Cwmbran to do that. So the
Heck of a lot of money,
recommendation
innit?
is routine maintenance is physically impossible if we got ulterior block drains somewhere else. So
Stupid, isn't it?
we're not keeping to our statutory duties of making sure the drains are clear and are not blocked. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, I'm just trying to see how we put that as a recommendation. I think there's a recommendation here that recognition and recommendation that obviously emergency needs are addressed, but concern about the capacity to be able then to do the routine maintenance if you're kind of firefighting all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
more
word.
like, yeah.
Is that okay? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Nick?
Could we put something in on asking them to report back to the committee on a review on the One Avon Bog and also the uplands and what they're doing ongoing to keep us informed with that, please?
Yep, everybody happy with that? That we would ask for...
Can you include the Mad Man in as well, because it's got the same problems, Nick?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
sure.
yeah, I think we're talking, Nick was saying uplands.
Yeah,
I think
the
we-
uplands
Yeah.
and also the One Avon Bog. I think they're
Well,
talking
that-
about doing that.
Would that be part of maybe a member seminar to present the the new upland strategy? Did we not long have one of those?
That would be good.
Sorry, apologies. I seem to remember we had something about the commons, but I think that was more about the crime prevention and off-roading.
We've got a new uplands management strategy in place, so it may be a members' seminar to present that wider to members.
Okay.
But it needs to get the lower commons in as well, not just the
fringe.
Understood.
Yeah.
So there's a recommendation about...
Not off fringe, you've been up there. Huge.
Okay, I'm trying to get through this, so I'm trying to get a summary here. So I think what the recommendation is for a members' seminar in relation to the upland management strategy, including the water management.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
And also coming back to us to keep us informed.
So there's also a recommendation that we actually get a report back, 12 months? Or are we asking for something tighter? Say 12 months.
Oh, you've just reminded me one other thing which was brought in. This does need to be tied in. It was mentioned in passing, tied into the climate emergency and nature emergency as well, because it is part of that.
Yep. I think there was also a point that we made, apologies, coming in as Chair's prerogative, there was a point that was made actually about sort of using volunteer support in terms of...
I said that already, Dave.
But I think, I think in terms of a recommendation that this is explored actively as part of the community engagement and community buy-in to flood risk management. Happy with that? Yep.
I did try to say that originally.
Okay. As you brought that up, David, what about Norma's comments about asking about volunteers and support? What about looking for sometimes financial support for, football groups or groups? That could probably tie in with that recommendation.
But it's
I think there was a clear point, and I think there was a response that actually, if there are community groups who are leasing land, and I think that was your point, Norma, they should be given support as to what grant funding and technical advice would be helpful to discharge their responsibilities, e.g. removal of trees. It's a very live issue for me at the moment because I've got trees coming down on the playing field.
But the point is the council wanted to offload the sports pitches and all that, and to me they were taking advantage of the sports groups, because the trees that I'm talking about, they weren't on the pitches at all. And the council were adamant that this particular organisation had to pay for it. And it was thousands. It wasn't just, hundreds of pounds, thousands. The road had to be closed down for these trees to be, it was a huge job. And I think that's very, very unfair.
I agree, Norma, but I think the issue is, we can't do something about what's happened, but what we do need to do is have information for people going forward.
But in the future, I'd like to see, some support for them and fair play.
Yeah. Linda, are you ahead of me?
I think Linda
I have got my hands up,
Yeah, I've got mine up as well. That's fine.
Linda, and then Stuart.
Yeah, we've discussed some very important issues which are relevant to all members in all areas today. So maybe sometime in the future, when some of this work has been more firmed up, community engagement, emergency plans, that type of thing, the reporting systems, we could have a members' seminar on it so that the information is disseminated through to everybody. And if we're putting that recommendation in about sports groups and people who lease public green spaces, can we also add in residents living in high-risk areas, so that we assure that they get the technical support and advice about how they can protect their properties specifically?
Yeah, I wanted to reference back, vis-a-vis what Norma's said. I wanted to reference back what I mentioned in this as well. I just remembered it's actually a really important point. You're talking about ash dieback. You're talking about clogging streams up and whether it's sticky or not sticky. There's a reference back to the tree policy, which is 2017. We last talked about it. The whole business about taking trees out or leaving them in. There's a policy. There's a policy in there about Woodland Road's a good example, or the 3 allotments there, about whether we maintain the trees. And the whole business with the sports grounds, one of them, because they're alongside the Avon Lure down there, where the trees fall into the river. That needs to be a reference back to our tree policy and active maintenance. It's a really important issue.
Okay, so there's a bit about, I'm trying again to summarise this, it's a bit about sort of making sure that the Torvine tree strategy and response with fallen trees...
And allotment policies as well, by the way, it's all tied in together.
...is aligned with our flood risk management and taken full account of. Yeah.
I think that's important, David, because I've had problems reporting trees that have wedged up against rivers in the past, and it's passed back and forth. It's NRWs. It's a riparian responsibility. It's everybody's and anybody's.
Norma will back me up. The endless allotment meetings arguing about whose responsibility the tree in the river is. The way of getting rid of the trees on Woodland Road allotment and other allotments is to let them fall in the river and run down. Doesn't bear thinking about. You remember that, don't you, Norma?
Oh, it happens so often that I can't understand why the council doesn't have, proper, how can I say, data about these things. I can't understand it. There's never somebody responsible for it.
Okay,
there's trees flowing down the Avon Lure all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. I think we're going slightly off topic here, but I think there's
not really, because that river blocks up. The point I'm trying to make, the tree policy needs to align with this flood risk policy.
Yes, which is the point I've tried to say. So I think we've got that. I don't want to prolong this any longer, members, because we're over by 20 minutes or so. We've captured the sort of recommendation points. I think we now need to get to a point of, if they're just checking there's anything substantive, but I think we now need to get the first draft of this written up by the officers to then get to you to check that we've covered them accurately. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
And there's that opportunity, if you think there's something that's been missed, to say, but I think between the comms, the connection, the advice, the guidance, I think we've covered a lot of the points here. I think there was a general point that you made, which is actually that, I suppose, an overarching point for me was we got a lot more out of the officers in conversation than was evident in the report.
Yeah.
Very much so.
So that was very helpful, but also...
Can I remind you, David, as well, that we didn't pick an item for the next meeting, or the date of the next meeting, as part of the agenda. So,
yep, we'll move on to that if colleagues are happy with that. So the next meeting is on the 7th of March. We've had obviously a condensed approach because the department asked that we fit this one in. And I think, colleagues, we've set to be the Enforcement Service Review. Are we happy to continue with that as our topic? I'm having a lot of assent from Councillor Haller here, who would love to see this covered. And he and I have spoken a bit about this previously, haven't we? So, are all members happy that we...
Yeah, I'm happy with that, David.
Great. That's a yes. So, can I say thank you to all members and officers for that ongoing support and contributions. And I will close the meeting and thank you, everyone.